Today's a sad day. This card holds some of my best strokes of brilliance in video production, yet it's basically useless. Thanks to this recorder, none of the audio from this microphone, except for 11 minutes before I even started filming with that camera, was recorded. I can't let this project go to waste, so what you're about to see is only the audio from the camera, which is miserable, but it's all I have now. It's going to be basically unedited except for 1 or 2 cuts here and there. And yeah, if you're wondering why videos haven't gone up lately, this is why. The electronics are just crappy now, and it's hard to get anything to work the way you want it to work. Or in this case, the way I need it to work. This thing needed to keep recording, and it didn't. One of these cameras needed to stop overheating, and it didn't. This MacBook needed to have a battery that worked, and it didn't. And I had to improvise, and even then, it was a really bad video. So in that case, I hope 1 or 2 of you find joy in this following video, as I can't anymore. Let's go see what we have. Okay, it's going. Technology is nuts. Here's some portable touchscreen devices. Can't really see them right now though. I'll show them to you in later episodes. Here's some batteries. And here's some cameras. And this tiny thing, smaller than the thinnest iPod ever made, is a computer. Now, how is that possible? Well, I'm not actually going to show you that, but what I am going to show you is the onward march of technology. How computers and how entire computer system setups got so small that they can fit inside a tiny aluminum casing. Let's get started. This is Arid Redux, and welcome. This is Arid Redux, and this is my old computer. Now this thing is pretty freaking powerful. I should know because I used it for gaming for quite a few years, more like 4 or 5 years, and it still runs pretty well today. However, there's a snag with the size of this. Something weird about it. This machine has almost the same specs that this does, but this doesn't have a screen, speakers, internet, nothing. Doesn't have jack except for the bare essentials. But this packs a full-featured screen, a cutie, speakers, a keyboard, and a mouse input device. This even has a hard drive and a DVD drive. Now, how is that even possible? Well, I'll kind of show you. I'm not going to show you the insides of this device specifically, basically because I can't right now, but I will show you how we went from this to this and then to this. And these two are close enough to that other one that you can extrapolate and tell the differences and figure it out. So to match this, let's figure out what a essential computer setup looked like around this time. So you had the computer tower, you had a keyboard, had a mouse. You had power cable for the computer tower. You had computer speakers so you could hear stuff, and its cable. You had the power supply for the speakers themselves. A lot of people had a microphone. A lot of people had cameras, so much so that Windows now requires one. You gotta be able to see what you're doing, so cables for the TV, or the monitor, depending on what you want to call it. And then the TV, and its power cable. Oh! I do not want to spill my drink, not right now. That's a lot of stuff. How are we going to pack that into a tiny form factor like that laptop? Well, let's see. What can we minimize? Well, this computer tower has a lot of wasted and extra space in it for things that we don't even have installed and can't use, so we can probably minimize that a little bit. The keyboard's pretty beefy. The speakers have a lot of wasted space, and don't pay attention to that. I blew this up. The cables are much longer than we probably need. The speakers need their own power supply from the wall, which is kind of dumb. And the camera has a bunch of extra controls and storage and stuff that we don't even need because it's connected straight to a computer to use it. And this TV is just way too big. Like, look at the size of this thing. So let's fix some of these problems. Let's take away this monitor. Now what would we replace it with? Well, it's got to be decently bright so you can see what the hell you're doing. And it needs to display a desktop. This'll do. And this comes with a camera and a microphone. Don't need those anymore. And the cables are replaced with little tiny ones that, are built specifically for the machine and the lengths it needs to connect to it that this was shipped with. So we can get rid of some cables. So we eliminated the display and its various cables, the microphone and the camera. So we have that. You can't see that. Now, what else are we going to do? Well, let's take care of the speaker situation. So these are some full-size desktop speakers. Well, what if you don't actually need that much volume and power and such? Because that's a lot of wasted space. Well, don't need their power supply anymore either, which frees up an outlet. And we have laptop speakers, which have the same connections as the monitor would. They go exactly where they need to go, and they're the exact length they need to be to get there. Now what else? Well, the keyboard and mouse, we don't exactly need all these keys, and well, this thing's pretty bulky and that has to hang outside the computer the entire time. Well, that's not very cool. So, what do we do about that? Well, naturally, we designed a whole new input mechanism called the trackpad, which is a touchpad similar to your iPhone or Android phone, which you can drag your finger across. It'll move the cursor just like a mouse would, just kind of like that. Except you don't need a mouse, you just use your fingers. And this simulates the left mouse button. Pretty standard trackpad, although it's a bit of an older one than they do now, but this has a keyboard, which is almost full size. It doesn't have a numpad or any other cool switches and stuff, but it does have shortcuts for stuff, and it does have a power button, which on this tower is on the top. So we no longer need a gross ass keyboard that's growing stuff in it. So we have those components. We have a keyboard, a display, and computer speakers. What else do we need? Well, we have this thing, which luckily I can open up and show you what's inside. Hey, you can see yourself. Get off. Here's the graphics card. Here's the power supply. Here's some of the RAM sticks for memory. Here's a storage hard drive. And way back here is the motherboard. That's what connects all these things together. Has some other related components. The CPU is behind this cooling unit. Here's some fans and a vent on the top for them. Another fan right here and a vent for that fan. And yeah, all the cabling that goes between these things, and yeah, it's pretty much what a desktop computer is, except on the back and on the top actually. There are some ports and the vent, and of course the power button. But on the back there's some important things of note. Here's the power supply with a power input plug that'll go to the wall. Here's the graphics adapter outputs. Here's some speaker plugs. One that even uses a light. Yeah, that was the thing. Here's your internet plug. Here's some USB ports for various external things like mice and keyboards and external hard drives and webcams and stuff. Some other crap that we don't need to worry about. And a vent for cooling, and that's about it. Let's put this goddamn thing back on already. Yeah, that's painful. Slide bitch. Okay. That's just not going to work, but that's okay. So as you saw in there, this has a lot of wasted space. Now what in the world are we going to do about that? Well, of course we're going to minimize it. So how would we go about that? Well, we can consolidate the components on the motherboard even more to make an even more compact motherboard that connects everything together. And in this case, that's this. It has a front and back with a whole bunch of stuff on each side. Now, the memory sticks that are in this computer, like this, they're about this size, they don't fit in these tiny ass slots, so what are you going to do about that? Well, of course, they made smaller, slower ones. They're about half the size, and they can fit into these slots. I'm not going to dick around with the mechanism, but that's basically how it works. And this particular motherboard can fit 2 of these sticks, whereas this can fit 4 of these larger ones, but what can you do? So that's one very crucial part of the computer, and another very crucial part of your computer. Now what else is there? Well, there's storage. Now this computer is a bit newer than this one that I'm currently laying out here, so it's going to have some newer storage devices in it, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to use the older type. Here's a hard drive. Pretty typical hard drive you would find. Actually, this one has a hard drive very similar to this one, just a little bit newer. It's the same size, doesn't have all this metal bracketing crap on it, but it works. And this is a 40 gigabyte hard drive. Now, how are you going to stick this into wherever all this is going? Well, I'll show you where it's going. So of course, this is literally just a tray, about an inch thick, okay, maybe a third of an inch, maybe 2/3 of an inch thick, to hold all of these components in the little box to make them easily portable. Now, you would think that this hard drive just goes in here, which, yeah, I guess it might if all this metal bracketing crap wasn't on here, but there's no way you could shut this closed with this in there. There's just no way. There's just not enough space in there. It's not thick enough. So they, of course, made this smaller. Also, they made it lighter. Now, did they do that? Well, They literally just made the same thing but smaller. And yeah, it's definitely smaller and has about all the same parts in it. This one's older, so it might have more parts. Eventually, computer people decided to put more electronics into one particular chip rather than make 3 different chips for each individual purpose. They made one that served all of them. So yeah, so a chip might do checks on the data, and another might do the data transfer itself, but eventually they just package those 2 chips into one that does both checks on the data and the data transfer itself. So that's how some of this is done. Less chips equals less space being taken up, so they can be made smaller. And the boards themselves can be made smaller. And the components themselves eventually could as well. So the device is just shrunk. And this is a prime example of that. So this does not have all the same parts, but it has all the same things it can do. And yeah. So this does not fit in here. This actually fits in right here. Okay, maybe the other way. It was the other way. See how it just fits in right there, and you could see that it just frickin' fits there. It just works. It's because this case was specifically designed for these types of drives, because these are very common. Just like this motherboard was designed to fit in this particular case. And it fits about right here. Okay, maybe a little bit further. Yeah, about right there. And the hard drive goes there. Memory goes there. There's even a door to access it if you don't want to open this entire thing up and take everything out of it like I did. Which I'll show you how that works later. Maybe. And the speakers go well, all around the case. One might go here, the other one goes here, and the other one goes, here. They, of course, pertain to what look like vents in the corners of the case, but they're actually speaker holes. So the sound from the speakers can come out where the speakers are. Or else they would sound like dirty nonsense, which they do anyway, but that's not the point. And believe it or not, this is a subwoofer. It's a third speaker towards the center of the device that adds more bass, more oomph to the sound of this MacBook, to the sound of this computer. And these other speakers, the 2 other ones, are just typical speakers. And they get their power directly from the motherboard of this computer, which makes it even more compact. So let's put these back in here. The speakers and stuff. Oh, I guess that's like literally where it would have gone. Cool. Did not think I would be putting all this crap back in here today. That's straight up just not going in, is it? Oh. Oh, I see. Yeah, this is also another how these things are so compact. They're they're annoyingly compact and they're hard to work on sometimes. Easier than today's machines, to be sure. I mean, there's the hard drive, there's the speakers, here's the memory, but yeah. Things are tight, annoyingly tight, and very tight to work with your fingers. You have to finger it just right. Now, this machine has another thing in common with this machine. Actually, they have a lot of things in common, two of which are the CPU and the GPU, the main processor of the computer and the graphics unit, the graphics chip that displays crap on the monitor or display, whatever's connected to the GPU. And this motherboard has a built-in CPU and a built-in GPU. However, they did not originate with this board. And that's another way they made this even more compact. They just stuck it right on there. They didn't have any interface in between, so it could be thinner. So it could be 2/3 of an inch thick instead of an inch thick. Now what's next? Well, what about cooling? This has several vents, one on the top, one on the back, and a couple on the graphics unit itself in this big machine. However, there's very little room for that in this tiny machine, but luckily, this machine is way more power efficient than this machine is, and less power being consumed by it means much less heat overall is generated by it. So it doesn't need to be cooled as efficiently. So this has to have water in it, this doesn't. And it can literally just be cooled by a special heat paste to transfer the heat to a metal pipe, which then transfers it to a duct, and then into many metal fins, which go about where you would expect, right over the CPU and the GPU. The most heated things in this machine. Right there, whoops. Right here, right over those two chips. Slots in right there. As if this machine was designed for it, which it is. Go figure. That's only going to do minimal cooling. What you need is some kind of thing to blow that air. Well, put a fan in it, obviously. So they did that. They made a spot for a fan right before it. And this fan gets its power straight from the motherboard with a connector right next to it. And of course you don't want the bare fins exposed to human fingers, or else you might touch them and burn yourself. Which to some people is fun, but not to me and not to most people. So, well, we're going to need to get some kind of grill for that, so human fingers can't stick their... So the human fingings can't fing. So we're going to put a grill there. Just a piece of plastic that I don't know how good it goes in. Oh, I see. And there you go. Now there's a grill there, instead of there not being a grill there. Okay, there kind of was already, but you get my point. So we have that. We have cooling down. So now we're going to move on to power. This machine doesn't have any power attached to it, so how is it going to run? How is it going to drive the display and the memory and the speakers and the hard drive and CPU and GPU and all the other crap? Well, in this state it doesn't have any power things to go with it. But going from this machine to this machine is meant to be portable, used on the go, like on a train or something. Or maybe on someone else's desk. You don't want to have to move your entire computer setup. So naturally, they just added a battery to it. Yeah. So, how are you going to fit this in here? Well, one, you wouldn't. This is not a rechargeable battery, so screw that. This, on the other hand, is a rechargeable battery, and this would not fit in this machine. But you could technically use it with it if you did some modifications, like gave it, I don't know, higher capacity, because you can add more cells, more pieces of the battery to give it higher capacity. But that might have some other effects, and well, there generally is circuitry in batteries to make sure that those other effects are minimal or amplified depending on what your need is. But this is a computer. It needs very specific power it has very specific power needs. So these are not going to work. These are actually meant for a camera. So we have a battery, rechargeable battery. We just need it to be bigger in capacity and thinner to fit inside this case. So let's do that. Let's make a battery that's extremely thin, that fits in the case, but is also higher in capacity. I don't think it's that much higher in capacity. It's maybe twice. Yeah, I think this is about half the capacity of a battery than this is. But this has the exact power requirements that this machine needs. So let's use it. Plus, it's built precisely for it, which is always a plus. I don't know what this tape is. I don't know why I put that there, if I even put that there. We're going to put this in later, but for the sake of talking about it now, you would put this in from the other side because there's an access door, the same door that you would access the hard drive, the memory, you access the battery from it too. You actually have to take the battery out to expose those other things, which is another plus for compactness. You can upgrade it. In the beginning, the upgrade options were pretty great. But as they got smaller, it got harder to do, which is why it's like all these things are in such tricky places to get to. Like, behind the battery. Well, it's because this machine is so compact, they had to think up a way to do that without compromising the look of the machine or how it works and its operation. So they landed on that idea. Now, you might be wondering, what goes here? Here's a hard drive, here's memory, here's CPU and GPU, here's the motherboard, here's the cooling, here's the speaker arrangement, and here's the battery. But what do you think is missing, other than the stuff we already talked about in this machine right here? Well, at this time, you would have really wanted a disk drive. No, not this kind of disk drive, this kind of disk drive. A DVD CD reader / burner where you can insert a CD of some sort or a DVD, and it'll read it and pop up on your computer, and you can plug it in through USB, and it would just work. Unless it didn't, but most of them just worked. So yeah, you could watch movies and listen to music with this thing if you have it in that format. If you bought CDs and DVDs, you can use them with this. Well, this model had a built-in one of these. This one is designed to be used on a desk. It's obviously very CE-like. Consumer electronics. You are a consumer. And that's exactly what this is. This is an internal version of that. It takes the same media. So yeah, and this just slots in here, like you would expect. It has a little bit of a cutout to fit the speaker arrangement, which is kind of, well, I mean, that's how it's designed. However, what's kind of weird is how that actually works. You slot the stupid drive in. So you slot the stupid drive in. It's not going to fit. Or maybe it is! Oh my god. Okay, so I got the drive to fit. It's a pretty tight fit because this is actually a new drive that I bought off of eBay from a similar model to this computer, from one of those, because some people sell them on eBay. And there's a very short cable that would go to a plug on the motherboard specifically for this drive, for making connection and giving it power and stuff. But this doesn't have it because it's slightly older, so yeah. But it's the same kind of concept. It's an internal version of the drive, and there's a slot on it, just like we saw on the consumer version. Just this one is slimmed down to fit in a case of a computer. a laptop. How would that go in? Oh, I'm stupid, that's why. Alright. So we have all the bare essentials, right? No, actually. This hard drive, you can pull it right out. It has no connection to this, to the motherboard or to the computer at all. It's just inside the computer, not doing anything, not even getting any power. Now, how are we going to get power to something way down here? How are we going to get power to something way down here and data from here to wherever it needs to go from here? Well, you can't. Or you can use a specially made cable for that purpose, specifically for this machine. Now, we saw some special made cabling in this machine, specifically to connect this DVD drive to the motherboard to give it power and such, which I talked about. It's just short cable, but the one that actually goes in this computer has this cable, and this goes directly to this slot on the motherboard. It just plugs in right there. Of course, I don't have the drive, so I can't demonstrate that, but it's a weird topsy-turvy kind of cable. And that enables the compactness of that drive and this machine even further. So how are we going to connect the hard drive? Well, it needs power and data, so we might as well make a combination power and data cable that plugs in to a section on the motherboard, like right here, that curves all the way. You can still see the curve. Curves all the way from where it plugs into the motherboard to the hard drive through a groove right along the DVD drive. Between the DVD drive and the hard drive surround, plugs into the hard drive, and then you can slot the hard drive in. And all the components are where they need to be. And they're plugged in, getting power and data. So let's do that. Let's plug in the hard drive, which has a SATA connection. Put that into where it goes. That's not right. Okay. Interesting. Alright, yeah, so that would plug in right there. It's plugged in. This DVD drive is actually too freaking thick. It's dummy thick, as some might say. So you can't actually fit the cable where it needs to go, because this wasn't made for this particular machine. Like I said, so that's just going to have to hang out in space here. I'm not really sure what I'm looking at, but it is another piece of special cabling for this machine. Yeah, that's where it needs to go. And all this stuff replaces all these bulky cables in computers like this. Here, how does this? That's miserable. That's not going to happen. Okay, so let's assemble. Got the mouse and keyboard combo right here. And the power button. And we have our monitor, camera, and microphone combo. which is very dirty. However, the microphone and the camera have to get their power and data over to the motherboard somehow, so how would they do that? Well, again, kind of weirdly. They plug into another special connector on the motherboard, and the hinge is actually built into this display, and you slot it in just like that. It goes in and out just like that, except it has to be anchored down to the bottom casing that all of the motherboard and the hard drive and stuff are in right now. So I haven't done that, so it's obviously not going to stay. Whoa, that actually held on pretty well, but yeah, as soon as I do much of anything, it pops out. I'll stick that back in there just for the sake of demonstration. This is painful. Alright, so I'm going to try to keep this together as I film this. I missed a part. Forgot the grill. You ever want to forget your grills? Not even your Bear Grylls. Alright, so we have our connections that actually go under the drive, which enables more of its compact nature. And you can, and if you wanted to, you could close this notebook. However, we can't do that yet. What do we have to do? Well, we have to put the keyboard and mouse combo on here. Now that looks a lot more like a laptop now, doesn't it? But something's missing. The battery. That's that empty slot right there. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to pretend that this is together right now. We're going to close the lid, as you can see. Looks like new, huh? My God, what a disaster. So if we turn it over, we see that there's, well, a little hard drive peeking out in there. But I'll show you that later. So I'm just going to slot what I can in here and then do whatever I need to do. What the hell? What in the D's nuts? Okay, that's not gonna work. So, how do we get power into this MacBook or into this laptop? Well, we have the battery here that I showed you earlier. However, you can't do anything with this on its own. You need to put power into this device to charge it up to use this computer with it. And much like this machine, you have to plug it into the wall or some kind of equivalent to charge this battery. And you can even use the computer while the battery is charging. And I'll show you how that's possible. Or I'll tell you how it's possible. I can't really show you very effectively. So we slot this battery into this laptop. We screw it closed. And it's in. And you'd be able to press this button to see... You need to be able to press this button to see, how much juice it has. But of course, this battery doesn't work. I don't have any working batteries for these models, so we're just going to have to continue. Now that we have our finished unit, sorry bud, we don't need you anymore. Oh my God. Oh! Ah! So how do we get power into this? Well, it's not immediately obvious. However, there is actually a power plug right there on the side. So let me go get the power supply, which on that other computer was inside it. But for this one and many other laptops, it's outside the computer in a little box. And that's this box right here. The CPU and the GPU of this computer typically draws around 40 watts of power. But this power adapter, it's called, which is a power supply that also is meant for charging a computer like this and its battery, is rated at 85 watts of power, meaning it can charge this computer's battery with the same amount of juice that it's charging or that it's running the rest of the machine with. And that can change at any time, so if you need more power for the CPU and GPU in this computer than 40 watts, it can change it to that and charge the battery just a little bit less, but still kind of charge it. And if you're only using a couple watts on this computer, or if it's off or something, you can charge the computer a lot faster with the full power of this, the full 85 watts, which is pretty cool. Let's plug it in and see what happens. I haven't actually tested this power supply before this video, but I'm confident it'll work as it looks pretty freaking clean. And I generally know which power supplies don't work and which ones do, so hopefully this one does. I just kind of found it in a drawer with MacBook parts. So here we go, plugging it into the wall. Sometimes it needs some help. Sometimes it doesn't fully recognize that there's a computer on the other end. That seems like that's the issue with this power supply, which kind of sucks. This is a bit of an older model. Let me get a newer one. Here's another 85 watt power supply. And this one I know for sure works. As soon as the power is recognized, the light on the power supply connector turns green, and then orange if the battery in here actually worked, which it doesn't. So it looks like it's getting power. So now that it's getting power, let's see what happens when I turn it on. You can see the drive spinning up. The DVD drive's revved up as well. The boot chime, which tells you that it's starting up. And now it's reading Mac OS X from the hard drive to start up into it, which is the OS that it's running. It is a little bit slow as it's still running off of a hard drive and not one of the newer storage mediums available. But as you can see, this is Mac OS X 10.7.5, right there. Everything works. So yeah. Although the battery doesn't work. So yeah. Sorry if you can't see this, but I wanted to try out another way of making videos before I get my preview monitor and can actually do stuff. So yeah, I'll see you all in the next one. This has been iWord Redux, and I'll see you all in the next live stream, short, or video, whatever that may be. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great rest of your evening. Good night. Here's some accidental photos I took when I was trying to focus the camera and I pressed it too far. What's this pointing? Testing the testes, auto parts. Testing the testes, auto parts.